All right, so are you ready to get into some really interesting stuff? Because today we're going to be diving into Instructions for Awakening Volume 1.
Oh, yeah. This is a good one.
This is by Igor Witkowskiego. Now, just a heads up, this isn't like, your typical self-help book.
Yeah, I know.
This one's kind of out there. Witkowski, he kind of brings together all this stuff about history and predictions and even the possibility of aliens to kind of explore how societies change over time.
Right.
And one of the big things that he talks about is this idea of a huge shift that's coming, a huge societal shift that's on the horizon, something that he calls an awakening.
Right. And he really stresses that this awakening might not be, like some peaceful feel-good movement or something.
Yeah.
He thinks it's really going to be triggered by a bunch of crises.
Oh, wow.
That are going to force us to completely rethink, the way we do things, everything about how we live.
Gosh.
Either like major economic turmoil, really bad social unrest, even, the possibility of meeting aliens.
Oh, my gosh. It makes you think, have you ever had that feeling like the systems that we're living in are, I don't know, they're kind of failing?
Yeah.
Like, the old ways of doing things just aren't working anymore.
Yeah.
Witkowski, he points to stuff like, the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah.
And all the political gridlock that we see as signs that things are, they're really starting to break down.
Yeah. He even compares our current world to, like, the time period right before the Renaissance.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Which is an interesting parallel to make.
Yeah. What do you think he means by that?
He sees our world as stuck in, like, all these outdated structures, outdated mindsets, kind of like the Middle Ages in a way.
Ah.
But, history kind of shows us that, these periods of stagnation are often followed by these big bursts of innovation and change.
So is he saying we're like due for a new renaissance?
Maybe.
But what would that even look like in today's world?
Well, I think for him, this new renaissance, it would really be powered by knowledge, critical thinking, and, just being open to seeing the world in new ways.
Okay.
He's really critical of what he calls this, like, mental garbage.
Mental garbage.
Yeah, like that constant stream of, like, mindless entertainment. He thinks that really dulls our minds. Makes us less able to think for ourselves.
Yeah, I can see where he's coming from with that. I mean, do you ever just feel like you're constantly bombarded with so much information and entertainment that it's hard to even, like, think straight?
It's too much.
Witkowski, he's arguing that this overload of mental garbage, as he calls it, is part of what's contributing to this stagnation, this societal stagnation.
It's like we're being lulled into this state of just complacency. Like we're just passively absorbing all this information, but we're not really questioning it. He even goes so far as to compare it to, like, living in a matrix.
Oh!
Like this constructed reality that prevents us from seeing the truth.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we've got these failing systems. Our minds are being dulled by all this information overload.
Yeah.
Where does this awakening actually fit in?
Yeah.
What does Witkowski think is going to be the thing to kind of shake us out of this stupor?
Well, this is where things get a little wild.
Okay.
Witkowski really believes that contact with aliens...
Wait, really?
...could be the catalyst for a massive shift in human consciousness.
Hold on, aliens? Is he talking about, like, UFOs?
Yeah.
Little green men?
Not necessarily little green men, but yeah, UFOs are definitely part of the picture.
Oh, wow.
He actually shares some pretty crazy stories from his own life.
Really?
Including, like, this UFO sighting he had in Poland where he thinks he saw a craft actually landing.
Wow, that's a pretty big claim. I mean, did he have any evidence to back that up?
Well, he actually took a film crew to the spot where he believes this craft landed. And what's interesting is, in the background of the footage, there's this massive radio telescope. It's the biggest one in Poland.
Wow.
They even talked to a professor at the observatory there to discuss the idea of extraterrestrial life.
Okay, so what did the professor say? I mean, did they believe Witkowski's story?
Well, at first, the professor seemed pretty open to the idea of, aliens existing out there in the universe.
Okay.
But as soon as they mentioned this alleged landing, he just, like, dismissed it.
Really?
You see, it was probably just a helicopter or like a whirlwind or something.
Wow. So it's like he was open to the idea in theory.
Yeah.
But he just couldn't accept it actually happening.
Exactly. It's like his mind was hitting a wall.
Yeah.
Witkowski calls this a cultural blockage.
A cultural block?
Yeah, it's like this resistance that a lot of people have to accepting evidence that challenges their worldview.
I get that. It can be really hard to let go of those long-held beliefs, even when you're presented with new evidence.
Definitely.
But Witkowski, he doesn't just rely on these personal anecdotes, right?
No, he doesn't.
He also goes into these ancient ruins like Pumapunku.
Oh, yeah, Pumapunku in Bolivia.
Yeah.
Those ruins are amazing.
They are incredible.
The precision and the complexity of the stonework there, it's mind-boggling.
It really makes you wonder how people could have created something so intricate without some kind of like advanced technology.
Exactly.
It's like it doesn't seem possible.
And that's what Witkowski's getting at.
Mm-hmm.
He argues that the level of sophistication in those ruins, it suggests that there might have been like a super advanced civilization here on Earth a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And he even raises the question of whether that civilization might have had some kind of connection to extraterrestrials.
Wow. Okay, so we've got these failing systems, we've got minds that are being dulled by this constant barrage of information. We've got UFO sightings and these ancient ruins that they defy explanation. Mm-hmm. So how does Witkowski tie all of these, seemingly random elements together?
Well, he sees them all as kind of interconnected signs.
Yeah.
Signs of a world that's right on the brink of this massive transformation.
Okay.
He believes that contact with aliens or maybe like rediscovering some kind of ancient knowledge that we've lost could be the thing that really forces humanity to confront its limits and embrace new possibilities.
That's a pretty radical idea, but it's pretty fascinating too.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see where he goes with this.
Mm-hmm.
Does he have any like historical examples that he uses to show how these kinds of transformations have happened in the past?
He does, actually. He uses a couple of interesting historical parallels to show both the good and the bad sides of these big societal shifts. Let's start with ancient Greece.
Okay.
He sees that period as a model for a successful transformation.
Ancient Greece, I mean, that was the birthplace of democracy, philosophy, and those incredible temples. I mean, amazing. What does Witkowski see as, like, the key takeaways from that era?
He highlights the fact that they really emphasized reason and logic.
Mm-hmm.
Philosophy and the arts were flourishing, and they developed democratic principles. He argues that all of those elements were really important to their success.
Right.
They allowed them to advance super rapidly in a pretty short amount of time.
So it sounds like a society that really valued knowledge and creativity and individual expression.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a recipe for a thriving civilization.
Exactly. But Witkowski also says that even this very positive transformation wasn't without its problems.
Really?
He points out that the Greek city-states, even though they had alliances, they weren't really able to fully unite against larger, more authoritarian empires.
Yeah. So it's a reminder that even when you're in the middle of a positive transformation, there can still be internal divisions, vulnerabilities that can ultimately lead to your downfall.
Exactly. He's saying that even though diversity and freedom, those are essential for progress, they have to be balanced with a sense of shared purpose and a willingness to work together for the greater good.
Okay, so ancient Greece is an example of a positive transformation, but one that ultimately had its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
What other historical parallel does Witkowski explore?
He also looks at Nazi Germany.
Nazi Germany.
Yeah, no, it seems like a strange choice to use as a model for transformation.
It does.
But he's not, celebrating their ideology or anything like that.
Right, of course not.
He's using it as an example to show the dangers of a transformation when it goes wrong.
Okay.
Especially when it's driven by fear and control rather than knowledge and enlightenment.
Right. That's a pretty stark contrast to the example of ancient Greece.
Yeah, it is.
So what does he highlight about Nazi Germany?
Well, he acknowledges that there were a ton of technological advances that happened in Nazi Germany.
Right.
Especially in areas like rocketry and aviation. But he also emphasizes the horrors that came from their totalitarian ideology.
Right.
The suppression of individual thought. The brutal persecution of minorities.
Yeah, it's a chilling reminder that technological progress without without ethics and morals can lead to devastating consequences.
Absolutely. Witkowski is using Nazi Germany as a warning to us.
Yeah.
A warning that we have to be careful about the values that drive our progress. We have to make sure that they're aligned with our highest aspirations as human beings.
Okay, so we've got ancient Greece as this example of a positive transformation, although not without its flaws, and Nazi Germany is this cautionary tale about progress without ethics. So where does Witkowski take us from here? Does he see our current situation as more aligned with the Greek model or the dangers of the Nazi regime?
It's hard to say. He seems to believe that we're at a crossroads.
Okay.
We're facing a choice between those two paths. He sees the world as teetering on the edge of this major shift, much like, the time before the Renaissance. But he also suggests that there are signs of a potential awakening.
Okay.
This growing dissatisfaction with the status quo that could lead to a new era of progress and enlightenment.
And I'm guessing this is where he brings in all those predictions and prophecies he mentions?
You got it.
Okay.
He looks at a whole bunch of different predictions and prophecies. Everything from ancient religious texts to modern stuff like channelings and accounts from people who claim to have insights into the future. He even mentions talking to a psychic about his research.
A psychic. Okay, now we're really going down the rabbit hole. But I have to admit, I'm intrigued. What are some of the common themes that he finds in these sources?
Well, a lot of them have this sense of upheaval and crisis. They're all pointing towards this period of intense change and disruption before things can really get better.
So it's like a cosmic detox.
Yeah, I like that.
Like gotta purge the old to make way for the new.
Exactly. But it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay.
Many of these predictions also talk about this positive transformation that comes out of this crisis, like a new era of knowledge and understanding.
Okay.
And spiritual awareness.
So it's a mix of challenge and opportunity, much like those historical parallels he draws with ancient Greece and Nazi Germany.
Exactly. He knows that the specifics and the timing, all that is uncertain.
Yeah.
He emphasizes that element of mystery and the fact that there are multiple possible futures.
Right.
But he thinks that by studying these predictions, we can kind of gain insights into the potential challenges and opportunities that are coming up, and maybe even influence how things unfold.
That's a pretty powerful idea.
Yeah.
It also makes me wonder, though, if this transformation really is coming. I mean, what role do we have to play in it?
Yeah.
What can we do to prepare for this awakening? How can we, ensure that it's a positive outcome?
That's a great question, and it's something Witkowski talks about directly in the book. He introduces this really interesting idea of light workers.
Light workers?
Yeah. They're basically individuals who he believes are born with this heightened awareness, and they have this specific mission to guide humanity through this transitional period.
So it's like there are people out there who are, they're kind of chosen
in a way, yeah,
to help us through this process.
He even shares a story about meeting this 11-year-old boy who he thinks is one of these light workers.
An 11-year-old. That's fascinating. What was so special about this boy? Okay, so an 11-year-old light worker. I mean, what made Witkowski think this kid was special?
Well, he described the boy as having this uncanny understanding of the changes that Witkowski thinks are coming. He even said that the boy had psychic abilities, he could communicate telepathically.
Whoa. That's pretty remarkable. But, if these light workers are supposed to guide humanity, what does that guidance actually look like?
Yeah.
What are they supposed to be doing?
That's a good question, and it's one that Witkowski struggles with too. He doesn't really give us a clear-cut answer.
Okay.
But he does connect this idea of light workers to a bigger message about the role that we all play in this potential transformation.
Right.
He emphasizes personal growth and critical thinking, being open to new ideas.
Okay.
In a way, he's saying that we can all be light workers in our own way.
So it's not about waiting for some chosen few to come and save us. Yeah. It's about each of us taking responsibility for our own growth and evolution.
Exactly. And that brings us back to his critique of the education system.
Right.
Witkowski thinks that instead of encouraging us to think for ourselves, our current systems really just prioritize obedience and memorization.
Thinking back to your own education, do you think it really prepared you for a world that's, constantly changing, full of unknowns?
That's a tough question.
Witkowski argues that we need like this radical shift away from rote learning and towards something that fosters, creativity and critical thinking.
Yeah.
He even points to this fascinating technique that was supposedly used by a group of aliens.
Oh, yeah, the W56 technique.
The W56 technique.
According to his contacts, it works like magic.
Wow.
But the basic idea is actually similar to the Socratic method, guiding people to discover knowledge through questions and dialogue.
Okay.
Rather than just like spoon-feeding them information.
It's like teaching someone to fish.
Yeah. Instead of just giving them a fish.
Right, exactly. You empower them to find their own answers, their own solutions.
And this kind of circles back to his point about all the mental garbage he sees in the media. He's worried that passively consuming all this mindless entertainment is actually making us less capable of thinking critically and independently.
Right.
He even has like a pretty intense term that he uses to describe this. What was it again?
He calls it living in a matrix of diseased beliefs.
Ooh.
It's heavy. Basically, he's saying that, we're unconsciously absorbing all these harmful ideas and thought patterns from the stuff we watch and read.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
It's like we're being programmed without even knowing it. And he sees the education system as part of that, right?
Okay.
Like instead of challenging the status quo, it just keeps reinforcing it.
Exactly. Witkowski thinks that our current education systems are basically designed to just create compliant workers.
Not independent thinkers.
Wow.
He draws a parallel, though not a moral one, between, modern schooling and Hitler's vision of controlling children's minds from a young age.
That's a pretty bold comparison. How does he justify that?
Well, he points to this quote from Hitler about, molding children into obedient citizens who are never truly free.
Wow.
And Witkowski, he sees a similar thing happening in our education systems. He thinks they emphasize conformity over critical thinking.
Right.
He's basically saying that even in a society that's supposed to be free, we can still be conditioned to just accept limitations and conform to a system that doesn't really serve our best interests.
It's like we're being trained to be good consumers and obedient workers, but not to question, the system itself.
Exactly. And Witkowski argues that this lack of critical thinking, this lack of independent thought is one of the biggest things holding us back from the kind of societal transformation he's talking about.
Right.
He thinks we need to break free from this matrix of diseased beliefs to create a better future.
Okay, so we need to ditch the mental garbage. We need to really change our education systems, embrace critical thinking.
Yeah.
But what about those other predictions and prophecies he mentions? The ones about, economic collapse and social unrest, global upheaval.
Yeah.
Are those just like inevitable parts of this awakening?
Witkowski presents those as possibilities.
Okay.
Not necessarily as things that are definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
He doesn't think the future is like set in stone.
Okay.
He thinks our choices and our actions can really influence how things unfold.
But how can we possibly influence something as huge and complex as a global societal transformation?
Yeah.
It feels like, we're just these tiny little specks caught up in this whirlwind of change.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But that's where Witkowski gets really interesting. He thinks that even our small individual actions can create a ripple effect.
Okay.
He points to historical examples like, the ancient Greeks, their pursuit of knowledge and new ideas that sparked a cultural revolution that still influences us today.
So he's saying that by changing our own thinking, our own behavior, we can actually contribute to this larger shift in consciousness.
Exactly. Every time we choose to think critically instead of just blindly accepting things.
Yeah.
Every time we embrace new knowledge, every time we make an effort to connect with our higher selves, all of that adds to this collective awakening.
That's a powerful thought.
It might sound idealistic, but Witkowski really believes that's how we can transform the world.
It's a beautiful idea.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the specific predictions and prophecies for a second. What are like some of the main threads that stand out to you? What should we be prepared for?
Well, one of the biggest themes is this idea of upheaval and crisis as like a necessary step before positive change.
Okay.
That saying, the darkest hour is just before the dawn.
Right.
It's kind of like that. A lot of these sources say that we need to dismantle the old systems and beliefs before something new and better can come along.
So maybe those predictions of, economic collapse and social unrest, those aren't necessarily signs of the end.
Right.
But more like, I don't know, the birth pangs of something new.
It's a good way to put it. Witkowski isn't, celebrating suffering or anything.
Right.
But he does see these potential crises as like wake-up calls.
Okay.
Opportunities for us to confront our limitations and question our assumptions.
Yeah.
And create a better way of life.
It's kind of like how forest fires.
Yeah.
They're destructive, but they're necessary for new growth.
That's a great analogy.
That they clear out the deadwood.
Yeah.
And make space for new life to come in.
And think about it. Throughout history, these periods of crisis, they've often led to amazing innovations and progress.
Mm-hmm.
When we're forced to deal with our limitations,
yeah,
we often come up with creative solutions.
So he's suggesting that these crises, even though they're undoubtedly going to be painful, they could also be like these catalysts for positive change, forcing us to reevaluate our priorities and build a better world.
He thinks they could push us to challenge the status quo and create a world that's more in line with our real needs and aspirations.
Okay, so crisis as a potential catalyst for change.
Mm-hmm.
What else? What are some other themes that you see popping up in these predictions and prophecies?
Another big one is the emergence of new knowledge and technologies.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these sources talk about humanity gaining access to information and understanding that was previously hidden.
Okay.
Or unavailable.
So maybe like rediscovering ancient wisdom, or even, as Witkowski suggests, contact with aliens who might share their knowledge with us.
Exactly. Witkowski seems to think we're on the verge of this huge leap forward in our understanding of ourselves and the universe.
Mm-hmm.
He says this new knowledge could revolutionize everything.
Wow.
From our technology to our spirituality to our very understanding of reality.
That's a pretty exciting prospect, but I can also see how it could be overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
Even dangerous to be flooded with so much new information all at once.
There would definitely be a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And Witkowski acknowledges that, absorbing all this new knowledge could be challenging, maybe even disruptive.
Okay.
But he also believes it's essential for us to grow and evolve.
Right.
He argues that by embracing new knowledge, we expand our consciousness, we unlock our potential, and we create a more fulfilling future.
It's like we're upgrading our operating system as a species.
Yeah, like that.
Expanding our ability to process information and make sense of the world.
Exactly.
But like with any major upgrade, there are bound to be some glitches along the way.
Of course, it's not going to be a seamless transition.
Yeah.
But Witkowski seems to think the benefits are worth the risks. He's encouraging us to be open-minded, to be willing to challenge our beliefs, and to embrace the unknown.
So he's urging us to be like intellectual explorers.
Yeah.
Venturing out into these new territories of knowledge and understanding with a sense of curiosity and courage.
Exactly. He thinks this willingness to learn and grow is key to navigating the changes that are coming in and creating a positive future.
Okay, so we've got crisis as a potential driver of innovation. We've got new knowledge expanding our consciousness.
Yeah.
What other themes are coming up in these predictions and prophecies? What else should we be kind of aware of?
Another common one is this idea of a shift in consciousness towards greater awareness, interconnectedness.
And spiritual understanding.
So like a move away from individualism and materialism towards a more holistic and compassionate view of the world.
Exactly. A lot of the sources that Witkowski talks about, they mention a time when humanity will recognize its interconnectedness with all of life.
Okay.
They predict a shift away from competition and conflict towards cooperation and collaboration.
Right.
Embracing a more spiritual understanding of reality.
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
I have to admit, a part of me wonders if it's really possible.
Yeah.
Can we really overcome these deeply ingrained patterns of selfishness and aggression?
It's a good question. Witkowski seems to believe we can. He argues that we're capable of evolving beyond our limitations and creating a world that's based on love, compassion, and understanding. He sees this shift in consciousness as like a natural progression, a step towards fulfilling our potential as human beings.
That's a beautiful vision.
But it also makes me wonder, how do we get there? What are the concrete steps we can take, both individually and collectively, to actually cultivate this shift in consciousness?
Witkowski thinks personal transformation is the foundation for societal change.
Okay.
He talks about cultivating qualities like awareness, compassion, forgiveness within ourselves.
Right.
He argues that these inner shifts that we make, they contribute to a collective awakening.
So it's not just about changing the systems and the structures around us. It's about changing ourselves from the inside out. It's like that Gandhi quote, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. Witkowski seems to believe that the key to creating a more peaceful and just and sustainable world lies in our own individual and collective evolution.
That's a powerful message.
Yeah.
It definitely puts the responsibility on us, but it also gives us a lot of agency. It says we're not just, victims of circumstance. We have the power to choose a different path.
And that choice, according to Witkowski, starts with becoming more conscious and compassionate people.
Okay, that's a good starting point.
Yeah.
But it also makes me wonder, what will this awakening actually look like in practice?
Yeah.
Will it be like this sudden dramatic shift, or will it be a more gradual, subtle process?
He admits that the transformation could unfold in many different ways. He doesn't claim to have all the answers.
Right.
He emphasizes that element of mystery and the potential for many different possible futures.
So he's not giving us like a specific roadmap,
But
but he's encouraging us to be open to new possibilities, to stay informed, to be adaptable, and to actively participate in shaping the future that we want to create.
Exactly. He doesn't see the future as something that just happens to us. It's something that we co-create through our choices and our actions.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
He's not presenting this fatalistic view of the future.
Yeah.
He's empowering us to actually take an active role. But we've been talking a lot about, individual transformation.
Yeah.
What about those bigger forces that are at play? Like, the potential collapse of our systems, the possibility of contact with aliens.
Yeah.
How does Witkowski see those things fitting into the picture?
Well, that's a really important part of his work. He seems to believe that contact with extraterrestrial civilizations could be a major trigger for this awakening that he describes.
But why?
Yeah.
What makes extraterrestrial contact so significant? It can't just be about the technology they might bring.
It's definitely not just about technology. Witkowski argues that contact with aliens could be the shock that we need to break free from our current belief systems.
Okay.
And really make way for new knowledge and understanding.
Yeah.
Imagine meeting beings with advanced technology.
Right.
And a completely different perspective on reality.
Wow.
It would challenge everything we think we know about ourselves and the universe.
It would be like holding a mirror up to humanity.
Yeah.
Forcing us to see ourselves from this completely new angle.
Exactly. Witkowski sees extraterrestrial contact as like a catalyst for this profound shift in human awareness, like a cosmic wake-up call.
Wow.
That could propel us into a new era of enlightenment.
That's a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
But it also brings up a lot of questions. Like, how would we actually react to such an encounter?
Yeah.
Would it be peaceful, or would it lead to, conflict and chaos?
He admits that the potential consequences of extraterrestrial contact are really complex and uncertain. He cites different predictions and prophecies that suggest, a range of possibilities from harmonious collaboration to destructive conflict.
So it's not like this clear-cut scenario of, benevolent aliens coming to save us or malevolent invaders bent on our destruction.
No, he doesn't think it's that simple. Witkowski thinks that the outcome of contact with aliens would really depend on our own choices and actions.
Okay.
He argues that if we approach it with fear and aggression, it's more likely to lead to conflict and chaos.
Makes sense.
But if we approach it with openness and curiosity and a willingness to learn, it could lead to this transformative partnership.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It really underscores how important our own mindset and intentions are in shaping the outcome of something like that.
Exactly. He seems to believe that we have the power to choose what kind of future we want to create, even when we're talking about something as potentially world-changing as as extraterrestrial contact.
Okay, so he believes that contact with aliens could be this major catalyst for transformation.
Yeah.
But the outcome ultimately depends on us, on our choices and actions.
Right.
But is he saying that this contact is inevitable? Is there any evidence to suggest that it's already happening?
Well, Witkowski shares some interesting stories and evidence that he thinks supports the possibility of ongoing contact with extraterrestrials.
Right.
He talks about his own UFO sightings, the radio broadcast with the military officer's testimony,
Right.
and the seemingly impossible engineering at Pumapunku.
But how do we know those aren't just hoaxes or misinterpretations?
Yeah.
It's easy to jump to conclusions when you're dealing with the unknown.
Witkowski agrees that skepticism is important. He's not saying these anecdotes are definitive proof,
Okay.
but he sees them as pieces of a larger puzzle that he thinks points towards the possibility of extraterrestrial involvement. He encourages us to be open-minded and consider all the possibilities.
What about those predictions and prophecies he talks about? Do any of them specifically talk about, when or how this contact might happen?
Some of the sources he cites do give really specific predictions,
okay.
while others are more vague and symbolic.
Right.
He doesn't just dismiss any of them, but he also acknowledges that it's hard to know for sure how accurate they are.
So he's not presenting them as like gospel truth,
No.
but as potential scenarios that we should be aware of and prepared for.
Exactly. He wants us to be observant,
to
consider all the possibilities, and to be ready to adapt to whatever might happen in the future.
That's a wise approach.
Yeah.
But it still leaves us with a lot of unanswered questions.
Of course.
Like, if aliens are already here, why all the secrecy?
Yeah.
What are their intentions? And how can we even begin to prepare for something that could change the world as we know it?
Well, those are questions that Witkowski grapples with throughout the book. He explores all sorts of theories about why this contact might be hidden. He talks about everything from like government cover-ups to this idea that maybe the aliens are waiting for humanity to reach a certain level of consciousness before they'll openly make contact.
So it's not necessarily like a malicious conspiracy.
Right.
It's maybe more like a form of cosmic like non-interference or a cautious approach to dealing with a species that's, less developed than they are.
Yeah, it's like they're giving us time to mature a bit before they make a big entrance.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe they're slowly getting us used to their presence through these sightings, through these subtle interactions.
Yeah.
And they're kind of preparing us for a more open and official contact sometime in the future.
That's another theory that he finds really interesting. He even discusses the possibility that they might be like actively guiding our evolution in some way, subtly influencing events and nudging us towards a higher level of consciousness.
Okay, so there are a lot of theories out there about why aliens might be keeping a low profile and what they want from us. But how can we as individuals prepare for something this transformative?
Witkowski thinks the best way to prepare is through personal growth and spiritual development.
Okay.
He says that by cultivating awareness, compassion, and open-mindedness, we'll be more open to new knowledge and more adaptable to change, no matter what form it takes.
So he's saying that we should really focus on our own inner transformation as the best way to prepare for the unknown.
Exactly. He seems to think that by becoming more conscious and compassionate people, we'll be better equipped to handle whatever comes our way, whether it's aliens or some other unforeseen challenge.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it also makes me think about, what role our current systems and institutions might play in all of this.
Right. Will they be able to adapt and evolve, or will they become like obstacles to progress?
Witkowski doesn't seem too optimistic about our current systems being able to handle this transformation.
Really?
He's pretty critical of our education systems, our political institutions, even our economic models.
Wow.
He sees them as outdated, inefficient, and ultimately unsustainable.
So he doesn't think they're likely to adapt and evolve.
He thinks they're more likely to cling to the old ways of doing things and resist change.
He argues that we need to create entirely new systems and institutions that are more aligned with principles of sustainability, collaboration, and spiritual awareness.
But that's a huge undertaking.
It is.
Yeah.
How do we even start to create these new systems? I mean, won't the people in power just, resist change?
Of course, they probably will. But Witkowski emphasizes the importance of individual action in grassroots movements. Okay, he thinks that by raising awareness, challenging the status quo, and working together to come up with alternative solutions, we can slowly shift the balance of power.
So he's calling for like a bottom-up approach to transformation instead of waiting for the people at the top to lead the way.
Exactly. He seems to think that real change comes from the people, from a collective shift in consciousness, and a willingness to actually create a better world.
That's a powerful message.
Yeah.
But it also makes me think about, how can we effectively organize and mobilize people? How can we create a movement that's both, powerful and sustainable?
He doesn't really give us a blueprint,
Okay.
but he stresses how important it is to have clear communication, shared values, and to focus on practical solutions.
Right.
He thinks that by, articulating a positive vision for the future and showing people the benefits of a new way of life,
we can inspire others to join this movement for change.
So it's not just about, protesting against what we don't want.
Right.
It's about creating and promoting a vision of the world that we do want.
Exactly. Witkowski thinks that by focusing on positive solutions and inspiring people with this compelling vision, we can create a movement that's both powerful and transformative.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
He's reminding us that change doesn't have to be driven by fear or anger. It can be driven by hope and inspiration.
Absolutely. He seems to believe that by tapping into our collective creativity, our innate desire for a better world, we can actually overcome the challenges that we're facing and create a future that's truly worthy of our potential.
Okay, I think this is a good place to pause for now.
Yeah.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation about, the potential for transformation, both for us as individuals and for society as a whole.
Right. But I'm left with a couple of questions.
Okay.
Like, what will this awakening... Okay, so we're back, and we're ready to jump back into Igor Witkowski's instructions for awakening. This stuff is really mind-blowing. I mean, we've talked about failing systems, aliens, even kids with psychic powers. So now I really want to know, what does Witkowski think this awakened world will actually look like?
Yeah, he doesn't just keep things vague. He actually gets into some really specific areas where he sees potential for, huge changes.
Okay, well, let's start with education then. He was pretty harsh on the current system, called it outdated, even compared it to, we won't go there again. What's his alternative?
He really likes this thing called maieutic.
Maieutic.
It's basically the Socratic method, learning through dialogue and questioning. So instead of teachers just lecturing, they become more like guides, helping students discover knowledge on their own. That makes sense, especially with all the mental garbage he talks about. If we're constantly bombarded with information, learning how to think critically becomes even more important.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just about memorizing facts. It's about analyzing them, questioning them, and forming your own conclusions. Witkowski thinks this kind of thinking is essential for the future, with all the rapid change and complex problems we'll be facing.
But can you really teach someone how to think critically? I mean, isn't that something you kind of either have or you don't?
Witkowski argues it's definitely a skill you can learn and improve, just like anything else. And he thinks maieutic, because it focuses on dialogue and asking questions, is perfect for developing that skill.
So imagine classrooms where kids are actually encouraged to, challenge the teacher, debate ideas, come up with their own solutions. That's a pretty big change from how most schools work today.
It is. And Witkowski knows that would require a huge shift in how we think about education. But he really believes it'd be worth it. He sees it as a way to, empower students, help them be more creative, and prepare them for a world that needs people who can adapt and think independently.
Okay, so that's education. What about technology? How does he see technology changing in this awakened world?
Well, he thinks technology will keep advancing super fast, but the big difference will be how we use it. He really stresses aligning technology with ethics and spiritual values.
So not just making new gadgets for the sake of it, but thinking about how technology can benefit humanity and make our lives better.
Exactly. He's worried about technology being used to control and manipulate people. He thinks we need to be really careful with its power and make sure it's used for good, not for bad.
He even mentions this thing called spiritual technology, which seems a little contradictory. What does he mean by that?
He sees spiritual technology as like tools and techniques that can help us connect with our higher selves, expand our consciousness. It's about using technology for inner growth and spiritual development.
So instead of just using technology to connect with people on social media, we might use it to connect with ourselves, explore our inner world, and deepen our understanding of the universe.
That's one way to think about it. He believes this spiritual technology can play a big part in helping us handle the changes that are coming and create a more peaceful, fulfilling world.
Okay, so we've got meutics and education, a more ethical approach to technology. What about spirituality itself? How does he see that changing?
He thinks we're moving towards a more unified understanding of spirituality, one that goes beyond specific religious rules and embraces the interconnectedness of everything.
So less focus on specific beliefs and rituals and more on the universal things that connect us all.
Right. He sees this awakening as a time of huge spiritual growth, where humanity will let go of outdated beliefs and adopt a more inclusive and compassionate view of the world.
That sounds great, but kind of idealistic too. Do you think it's really possible for us to set aside our religious differences and embrace this unified spirituality?
It's a big challenge, that's for sure. But Witkowski seems to think it's not just possible, but crucial if we want to survive and evolve. He says that clinging to rigid beliefs will only lead to more conflict. He believes a more unified spirituality is how we'll create a more peaceful world.
I keep thinking about those predictions of a shift in consciousness away from individualism and towards a more holistic, compassionate way of seeing things. It sounds like Witkowski sees this spiritual change as a big part of that.
Definitely. He seems to believe that the more we understand how interconnected we are, the more compassionate, empathetic, and responsible we'll become.
That's a really powerful idea. But we've mostly focused on the good things about this transformation. Are there downsides, risks, or challenges that Witkowski sees coming up?
Oh, he definitely acknowledges there'll be challenges along the way. He warns about potential social unrest and conflict as people try to adapt to all these rapid changes.
I mean, it makes sense that a big change in consciousness would also shake up existing power structures and social norms, right?
Right. He thinks the transition could be pretty chaotic as the old systems break down and new ones are created. He stresses being flexible, adaptable, and open to change.
So it's not going to be easy, more like a wild, unpredictable ride.
That's kind of how he sees it. He says to be ready for the unexpected and to trust that we'll be able to handle whatever comes our way.
That brings us back to that idea of personal transformation. If the world's going through this massive shift, it seems like we each need to be ready to adapt and evolve, too.
Absolutely. Witkowski's whole message is about empowerment. He's saying we're not just watching history happen, we're actually helping create the future.
But how do we do that? What can we actually do to prepare for this awakening and make sure it turns out well?
He says to focus on becoming more aware, compassionate, develop critical thinking skills, and be willing to learn new things. He reminds us that even small actions, when you do them with intention, can make a difference.
So it's not about waiting for some big plan or a leader to tell us what to do. It's about taking responsibility for our own growth and figuring out our own way to contribute.
Exactly. Witkowski seems to think that the power to create a better world is within each and every one of us. He's calling for us to awaken together and work to create a future that's more just, sustainable, and fulfilling for everyone.
Wow, that's a really powerful message to end on. We've covered so much in our deep dive into Igor Witkowski's Instructions for Awakening. We talked about societal changes, possible contact with aliens, personal growth, all the predictions and prophecies about a new era for humanity. It's been a fascinating journey, and I bet it's left all of us with plenty to think about.
Definitely. His work gives us such a unique and sometimes challenging perspective on the future. He wants us to question what we think we know, be open to new things, and actively help create the world we want to live in.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you'll keep exploring these ideas and keep finding new and meaningful ways to engage with the world around you.